حي على
سبحان رب العظيم سمع الله لمن حمده ربنا لك الحمد.
It was 12 years ago, and it's engraved in my brain like it happened yesterday. My older cousin and I visited an occultist who does magic for a living. While we were there, the magician performed a ritual. He called down a specific entity, and as proof, asked the entity to take control of my hand and to lift it up. And without my will, my hand rose. It happened. Now, I don't really know what he was doing after the spirit lifted my hand, whether he was gathering information or maybe clearing or breaking the spell. But I have read about this kind of practice in many old Arabic manuscripts. I also read that sometimes the magician can make a jinn take over a person and speak through him or her. You can find the rituals in some books. Anyway, I was so impressed and fascinated that when I went home that night, I locked my bedroom door and started to do and say the same things that the magician did, like an idiot, without knowing who I was calling or where I'm facing, and without any spiritual experience or knowledge. I called and asked the entity to lift my hand, and surprisingly it happened. But I was a bit suspicious this time, and I thought that maybe I had made my own hand move subconsciously. So I called my older sister, and I asked the entity to raise her hand, and her hand rose. My sister was shocked, and I was kind of proud and cocky. Now here comes the trouble. I kind of remembered how the magician called the entity, but I couldn't remember how he banished it or dismissed it. So I had no choice but to go to bed without dismissing the entity. I was in bed for just a few minutes, with my feet crossed and fully awake, when I heard like a loud knock on wood or something. A few seconds later, there was another knock, but closer, and then another, even closer. There were about 4 knocks, and the last one was right under my window. The next thing I know, my feet were pulled in a very aggressive way, but I didn't feel anything grab them. It was like my leg was under the control of something else and it was pulling it. It happened very quickly, and afterwards I was terrified and didn't move from my bed until morning. Later, after I started my research into the occult, I eventually discovered that the entity I was messing with was a type of jinn called Afarit.
Dear Archangel Raphael, please send your healing green light
to every cell in my body and to every part of my being. Your presence is steely and rigid, businesslike and stern, but not unfriendly. Our relationship is formal. I need your help, and you need mine. You are clear as the sky above. I am your ally, not your friend. Do you know the difference? I ponder this and understand. Many come to me for healing, but few give of themselves. To do what you ask, I will need to give life. Blood for blood, life for life. This is my price. I shudder with fear, but nod in assent. Your meaning is known to me, and what you ask is not unreasonable. The thing is, donating blood will require me to face a very large needle, my one true terror, which will remain in place for quite some time. The very prospect gives me chills. Yet I agree to the terms. You fulfill your end of the deal immediately. As soon as our pact is sealed, the phone rings, and I'm given the good news. There is no explanation how this could be, they say, but congratulations. I'm ashamed to relate that it took me over a week to schedule my donation. I was scared, and I procrastinated. You were pretty patient about it, all told. What a coincidence, though, that the blood drive truck parked right out in front of my office building. What a coincidence when the HR team came through and asked who wanted to donate. I hear you, and you're right. Even though you haven't said a word about my tardiness. Down I go then. I hold your sigil in my hand when I sign the donation form. I try not to think about it and focus on other things while the machine takes your due. When I am leaving the truck, they tell me my blood is rare and in high demand. This makes me feel good about myself as I sip my orange juice and eat my cookie. Thank you, Angel of Sunrise. I'm proud to be your ally. My brother shared with me a true story of an extremely odd, evil, and clairvoyant man that he and his friends encountered a few years back in Jacksonville, Florida. My brother and his buddies were drinking at a bar when a strange man approached them. My brother recounted that at first, he felt merely perturbed by the presence of this man because he looked like a hanger-on who was trying to butt in to the conversation. He said this guy was trying to be jovial, laughing as if he knew what the guys were talking about, and trying to slide in to the group. His presence was more of a nuisance than anything else at this point, and none of the guys seemed interested in talking to this stranger, yet he managed to make his way into their circle. My brother said that out of nowhere, the mood of this stranger changed completely. And so did the subject matter. He asked my brother's friend, "If I could give you anything, what would it be?" At first, the friend laughed it off, but the stranger let it be known by his tone that he was completely serious, and he asked him again, "If I could give you anything?" The friend replied something like, "I don't know, man. Money? And a really hot wife." Well, things got even tenser when the stranger stated that he could do these things for him in exchange for his soul. He then started openly sharing the details about himself, how he had become possessed by a demon, specifically by the demon Beelzebub. It was his duty to find humans willing to sacrifice their souls, one person every year, or something like that. My brother noticed his eyes had become black at some point, and the most indescribable aura of evil surrounded him. All the guys were starting to freak out a little, yet they still believed this guy was probably full of it. The stranger seemed to sense this, and so wanted to prove his ability. He stated that he knew everything about my brother's friend, and said, "Ask any question, and I will know the answer." So my brother's friend asked, "Okay, what is my mum's name?" And the demon answered, "Kelly, with an I," which was absolutely correct. At this point, now being completely freaked out, the guys decided to get the hell out of there. What stood out most to my brother was the incredibly evil, creepy, inexplicable feeling that he and his friends all felt firsthand. My ex-boyfriend's mum recently had her eye makeup tattooed on and needed a few things from the store. So she sent her 2 sons, who lived with her at the time. It wasn't until my ex and his brother were in the checkout line receiving funny looks from the clerk that he realized that they were 2 lone men buying nothing but cucumbers and Vaseline, which his mum wanted to soothe the swelling of her eyes, or so she says.